Alright. I need to admit something before we start.
This is usually where the educational damage begins.
I spent an embarrassing amount of time assuming people who were great with AI just knew secret prompt wording I didn't.
That is an extremely popular superstition.
It's comforting, really. If the answer is secret wording, then the rest of us can blame vocabulary.
Unleash your creative AI engine.
Episode 4: Taste is the real skill. Why judgment matters more than prompts.
But the difference turns out to be something much less mechanical. The real skill is taste.
That is not the word I expected in a conversation about AI.
It sounds artistic, but in practice it is extremely operational.
It's the ability to tell whether something is actually working.
And that matters because, as we said last time, the model is not executing instructions.
It is predicting what kind of response seems appropriate from the signals it receives.
So every output is less like a final answer and more like a candidate direction.
Which means someone has to decide whether that direction is useful.
So this is the step the automation story keeps skipping.
Exactly. The system generates. The human evaluates.
And that evaluation determines what happens next inside the loop.
The practitioners who seem fast are usually doing one thing faster than everyone else.
They recognize signals sooner.
And once you see that, prompting starts to look a lot less like the skill.
So when people say someone is good with AI, what they're actually noticing is faster recognition.
Yes. They recognize whether something is promising or misleading almost immediately.
And that recognition sits in the middle of the interaction. First, the system produces an output. Then something extremely important happens.
The practitioner evaluates what they are seeing.
Not just whether it's correct, but whether it's interesting.
Exactly. The question becomes, does this move the project forward?
If the answer is yes, the practitioner steers the system further in that direction.
So the model suggests. And the human chooses.
Yes. The system proposes possibilities. The practitioner decides which possibility deserves exploration.
Which means taste is not decoration.
It's navigation.
And that navigation step quietly determines whether the interaction compounds or resets.
So the difference between frustration and momentum is basically judgment.
Exactly. Judgment is the steering wheel.
Which makes the popular idea of prompt mastery feel a little incomplete.
Because prompts are only the beginning of the interaction.
The real skill lives in what happens next.
The moment where you decide whether the signal is worth following. That decision is the beginning of directing.
So if taste is the steering wheel, how does that actually change what someone does?
The easiest way to see it is to compare two different interaction styles.
On the left is the pattern most people start with. The user writes what they hope will be the correct prompt.
Then they wait for the system to produce a finished answer.
If the answer isn't quite right, the instinct is to rewrite the prompt.
Which leads directly back to the reset loop we talked about earlier.
Exactly. The interaction quietly starts over again.
Now look at the column on the right. The director rarely begins by writing perfect instructions.
They begin with a fragment and explore what the system generates.
This is where judgment begins to matter.
The practitioner evaluates whether the expansion is promising.
If the signal is strong, they steer the system further along that path.
So the difference isn't technical. It's behavioral.
One approach tries to command the system. The other continuously evaluates what the system produces.
Which means the real skill isn't prompt writing. The skill is recognizing direction.
That recognition is what allows someone to guide the system. And that's the moment a user becomes a director.
That explains something I've noticed watching people who are really good with these systems. They move incredibly fast.
From the outside, it can look like they know secret prompts.
But what you're actually seeing is faster recognition.
Meaning they immediately recognize whether something is useful.
Which means they can experiment more often.
And experimentation gradually builds skill.
Skill improves judgment.
And better judgment increases speed.
Which allows practitioners to attempt larger ideas.
And larger projects generate more opportunities to experiment.
Which creates a reinforcing cycle.
Experimenting builds skill. Skill increases speed. Speed enables bigger projects. And bigger projects generate more experiments.
Which explains why experienced practitioners can look years ahead.
Not because they know secret prompts, but because they have spent more time inside the loop.
So the skill compounds.
Judgment turns into momentum. And momentum quietly turns judgment into leverage.
So the people who look comfortable with these tools, they're not necessarily better prompt writers.
No. What they've actually built is judgment. The ability to recognize signal.
The ability to steer toward interesting directions.
And the ability to stay inside the loop long enough for that judgment to compound.
Which explains something that confused me for a while. The people who figured this out early don't seem worried about AI replacing them.
Quite the opposite. They see the systems getting stronger. And they see their leverage increasing with them.
Because every improvement in the system amplifies good judgment.
Which means the real question isn't whether the tools get better. They will. The real question is whether the practitioner develops taste.
Because taste determines what direction power flows.
And that's why the people who understand this shift feel strangely calm about the future.
They aren't waiting for instructions. They're already directing the systems.
Which is why the ones who figured it out aren't worried.
Next episode, why the biggest mistake people make is trusting the system too much.